name's David. I'm the Artistic Director of the Dead Puppet Society. We're a visual theatre company that's based between Brisbane in Australia and New York City in the US. We've been working for about 10 years now, trying to sort of advocate for the use of puppetry in mainstream theatre and also creating our own large-scale visual theatre works. What I'm going to talk through today is the 3 key manipulation principles that we use within our company. The manipulation of puppets is obviously an incredibly complex art form that takes years and years to master, but what we've found in our work, particularly with performers who have not used puppets before, is that it was really important for us to have a couple of key manipulation skills that we'd be able to teach them very easily and that they could pick up quickly, that would then at least let them begin to get some sort of performance out of the puppet so that they could, sort of make use of their own actor training through that object. So we'll talk through them. There are only 3 and they're very simple. We usually teach them using recycled plastic bags or old newspapers. So let's go. The first one is what we refer to as the focus or the focus point of the puppet. And to create that in our plastic bag, all we have to do is to grab one of the top corners. I should say first we'll fill it with some air. Then to grab one of the top corners to pull the air out of that section. And then to tie a really loose overhand knot, like so. Just so that we create on our puppet a really clear head area and that head has a very clear directionality to it. Great. And so then what we get the performers to do is to place this object onto the ground to make it look like it has some weight, so it's not just a floating ghost of a thing. All the puppets that we use are direct manipulation puppets, so there aren't any rods or strings to control. So you just place your hand directly on the back of the puppet's head, and then you train its focus point to look around the room, moving from specific place to specific place. And constantly trying to vary the rhythm sort of throughout, so it doesn't just feel like it's on a constant sort of like wandery days. The other thing we introduce at this point is the idea of the performer's focus. All of the puppeteers in our work are always visible, and we try and instill in them the idea that it's really important that they are always watching the puppet. And it's set up what we've started to call a focus loop, whereby the audience, because the performers are often much larger than the puppets, look to their faces, but when they see the performers looking at the puppet, they sort of automatically follow that focus down and begin to sort of train their gaze on the puppet. And we found that it only takes a couple of minutes before eventually the audience will sort of give up really watching the puppeteers and just focus in on what they're doing because of that intense concentration and awareness that they have. So yeah, thing number 1 is focus. The focus of the puppet, where it's looking, the focus of the performer, where they're looking, down at the puppet. The second thing that we instill is the idea of a thing called critical motion, or the idea that this is a plastic bag with a knot tied in it. It's not real, and when it's still, it ceases to be anything other than a plastic bag with a knot tied in it. Its life comes through movement. The most critical of those micro movements is a thing called breath. And so all that's about is that whenever this puppet's focus point comes to a point of stillness, where it's looking at something, and it would otherwise be dead because it's still, we just gently let the breath of the performer travel through their hand to let the puppet breathe as well. So it looks like this. The puppet's looked at something, and then gently breathes. Easy. We always try and get the performers to sync their breath in with the puppet, and we sort of feel that it helps them to inhabit that character, that if they're also psychologically aware of what's going on in any given performance moment, their breathing will hopefully be authentic to that performance moment, which means that then the puppet's breathing is also going to match that performance moment. So that's sort of more of an organic breathing pattern. The other thing that we teach that breath can be used for is the idea of signalling to the other performers what can happen. Often there are more than one operator on a single puppet, and through that entire ensemble breathing in the same time, you get this idea of the rhythm of the puppet being equal across all of the operators, so that then they can begin to play with it. But we use a thing called a signal breath. So if this puppet was going to move over that way, that it would let the rest of its operating team know it's going to happen by taking a breath in and then executing the movement on a breath out and going for a motion. Likewise also, if this puppet did have legs for sitting and standing up, if it was going to stand, that it takes a breath out, signal, and then it can stand in with the intake of breath. We always try and go breath in means movement up, breath out means movement down or forwards. So to sit down, this guy would breathe in, signal, and then sit with the breath out. So focus, where the puppet's looking, where the operator's looking. Breath, small motions that keep the object alive and are also useful for signaling. And then the final thing that we teach is the idea of gravity, and particularly the center of gravity of that puppet, and how that can be used for the ensemble to be able to steer the puppet around a space without them having to have sort of a pre-decided choreography. So we're just going to quickly upgrade our little plastic bag guy. We open it up so that it becomes a triangle-y shape with that little head we made in the middle. And then these two sections down the bottom we scrunch together into legs. And a quick knot just at the top of each one to stop it from coming undone. Number 1, number 2. And we end up with sort of like a little plastic bag chicken that has a little body, a little head that can move in relation to that body, as well as 2 little feet of different lengths. That's well done. Cool. David's going to give me a hand at this. So, we operate it like this. For this puppet, David's going to take the head, and he's also going to hold the torso of the puppet. So he's the lead operator because he's in control of the puppet's focus point, which means that if I take the feet, I become the secondary operator, and I have to listen to what that head's doing and respond to it. So we always say to our teams that puppets, when they're held in this way, the bottom person on the feet has got to be aware of the line of gravity or the center of gravity of the puppet. David, if you keep the head still for a sec. If I had the feet out to the side so the puppet was leaning over, we don't believe that it's a real object in the world or a living object in the world because it would just fall over. So my job on the feet is to make sure that they always sit underneath that center of gravity of the puppet. What that means is that if David, as the lead operator of the puppet, wants to move the puppet around, all he has to do is gently nudge that center of gravity too far one way, and I'll respond with the feet. Then go to a side, check in. So you sort of drive it around a little bit like a Segway scooter. Then if you wanted it to sit, he could take a signal breath in, and then breathe out. And we collapse. If we wanted to stand up, he takes a signal breath out, and breathes in to stand. Love it. Easy. So they're the 3 things. Focus, where the puppet's looking, where the performer's looking. Breath, how the puppet's breathing in time with the performer for us to believe in its life, and also the psychology of the scene, the idea of signal breathing, up or down, and then this idea of the center of gravity and the way that that can be used for the lead operator to steer the puppet around the space so the rest of the team can follow. That's it.